Running Sentences presents Against an Angry Ocean. Part 8. A computer and a room. More secrets about the ship are revealed while things continue to get worse around the ship. This story is written and narrated by Michael Harry. It is a work of fiction, so any names, characters, businesses, events, and situations within this story are products of the author's imagination. Any resemblance to real people, situations, characters, businesses, events, and or fictional businesses, characters, events, and so on is purely coincidental. Copyright 2025, Michael Harry. All rights reserved. Ursula attended to the screens on the bridge of the ship, making sure that things looked okay. For the most part, it appeared that way, but in the back of her mind 1,000 worries were going off, all of them about how the computer was still in control. I must warn you, Ursula, that what your crew is up to is dangerous. They're doing their jobs. I have no complaints about their work. But the ship shut down on their watch. The engine came to a full stop, and it was up to you to go out and get the sails working, all because of them. None of them volunteered to do that job, by the way. It is not good. It is my job and my responsibility to do such things. Nothing you'll say will change how things are. I disagree, Captain. They will ruin everything if you let them. Those three are getting into spots that no human can survive in. What? I only sent one. See, they aren't listening to your orders, Captain. Computer, if they feel like it makes sense for the three of them to go, then so be it. There is work to be done, and it will be done by them. I will turn everything off if you don't listen to me. But I am listening to you, computer. It's just I'm not acting on your orders. If you were listening to me, then none of this would have actually been happening. Keeping her eye on the consoles, Ursula felt she had more important things to do than argue against the computer. This ship was moving along at a good clip, but it meant nothing really, and her concerns about that other ship were growing. Computer, what is going on with that other ship that we saw on the radar? What ship? I didn't see a ship. The one on the radar that was pinging us, yet we cannot contact them. I don't know what you're talking about. I see nothing out there and have no idea what you're talking about. So, goodbye. Ursula reached for a nearby screen, intent on switching it over to the radar, but as she did, the ship suddenly shuddered. Everything went dark for a moment as the emergency lights came on, casting a soft glow about the bridge. Computer, did you do that? A busy morning of fielding phone calls and emails to one person and then another kept Hendrik busy. He didn't mind since he kept his mind off the ship, but since all of this work was about said ship in the first place, well, it felt like he was trying to forget but could not. Sir? Yes, what is it, Yule? Do you have some sort of appointment that I need to know about or to go to? The rescue ship, sir. Hendrik, who had been looking down at some paperwork, snapped his head up to look at his secretary. She always came in at the most interesting times to deliver some news that either turned bad or good. He was never really sure. What is it? Is it close to our ship? It's struggling to find it, sir. They said they had it on radar, but then it vanished. They'll keep trying to get to it, but the storms out there are pretty bad. Damn, you've talked to Ursula, right? How was that on their end? The conversation we had was pretty calm, appeared pretty calm, but they weren't in a storm, if that's what you're asking. But they would have moved on since then, so we don't fully know. It didn't feel right to Hendrik, so he shook his head. There was nothing he could do or say right now, other than to keep track of the situation. He waved his secretary away. A soft buzz filled the air along with the darkness for a moment as the three poured into a room. A moment later, the emergency light came up, barely lighting up the space, making this computer room, or space, or computer servers, whatever it might have been, appear before them. There were stacks and stacks of things that were now blinking about. What happened? Something turned off or shut off, Kaylee? I guess the computer? Computer, are you there? Sky said. They continued to stumble further into the room, picking their way, carefully as they could, while waiting for an answer from the computer. I think they aren't around anymore, guys. Well, I guess that's the job done then. We found it, right? And, well, I don't know what else to do. Do you, Chris? It doesn't feel complete of a job, does it? Kaylee, what do you think of this? She herself tenses up at the question and wonder what had happened to them. There was nothing that should cause this, but maybe the computer kept doing whatever it wanted and when they thought it was gone. Be wary, guys. A few more lights came on, illuminating the room better and giving them a sense of where they were. A neat, tidy space that was likely a server room or computer room of some sort, which was exactly what they'd been hoping it was. The real question is, do we destroy some of this stuff? I mean, that was our job, right? I think without knowing which one is the main computer, that might be bad, Sky. It would ruin the rest of the ship, wouldn't it? The computer might have integrated itself so much into any of these parts to help run the boat that we really can't hurt one without hurting everything, guys. As Chris said this, Sky was shaking his head yes. Right, so no good options. Communication line, are you open? The shout from Sky bounced about the room, eventually disappearing and going about, as expected. No response. I think I see a phone over there if you want to try that. What, where? Sky asked gaily. To your right, against that wall. Oh, thanks, Gaily. He wanders in that direction, picking up the phone, only to put it down a second later, and shaking his head as he came back over to them. There's nothing there, it sounds dead. The entire ship is dead? I don't know about that, Chris, but there are lights and things that appear to be working, so maybe, but maybe not. I have to agree with Sky on this, Chris. We don't know enough about what's going on. I think one of us needs to go talk to the captain again, and the other needs to check the engines to see if that's true, and if they're working. Then I'm guessing you want to stay here, Mr. Sky. I have no objections to going to either of those other things. I don't know much about engines, though, so I can only tell you if it's on or off, based on the amount of noise coming from it. Kaylee nodded as she quickly figured out who was going to do what. The engines would have to be Chris. He probably would suspect something up with her after that strange message. Not worth it to cause trouble, and that left her or Sky to go see the captain. Chris, you're better with engines than I am. I will go see the captain and report what we know so far. Okay with everyone? There was a slow nod from all three, and off they went. Making his way back to the engine room, Chris kept an eager eye out looking for anything suspicious in the hallways. There was a combination of lights and emergency lights operating, which was weird, and as he passed by the cargo containers, he thought he saw movement, but everything was buttoned up tight and it was a flash of a moment. He kept going until he got to the hallway with the engine room at the end of it. The door was slightly ajar, which wasn't what he wanted to see. Perhaps someone was in there. Hello, Captain. Silence came back to Chris, but that was soon interrupted by a crackling sort of noise. It sounded like it was coming from above, like from the speaker system, perhaps? Communication system, are you active? The air was filled with static, but soft words were coming through. This is a message, the voice said. Hello, is someone there? We are aboard the Coast Guard cutter Hercules. We are... I can hear you. Can you hear me, sir? The static then cut out, along with the voice. There had been no reports since the last time his secretary Jewel had reported in, and with nothing to do or go off of, Hendrik found himself pacing about his office, a drink in hand, all to help with his nerves. Jewel, are you around here? He called out, expecting a prompt answer, but had to wait a few moments for the door to open and for her to appear. Sir? I was wondering if you had anything to report. About the ship, I'm assuming that's what you're referring to? Yes, I was hoping you had some sort of news. Your associate just reported to me, so I do have some information. The Coast Guard cutter is out there and said that they had the ship, but it vanished on them, as before. Vanished? Yes. It was on radar, then was gone. They're continuing towards that spot, but they don't think they'll find anything. Why not? I believe the thought process is once a ship disappears, that means it broke up and or potentially sank where it was. Hendrik tightened his jaw at the news. This both solved his problems and created new ones, potentially, and only if it was true, which it might not be. Fighting back the feelings of discontent, he nodded to her. And they don't have high hopes or something like that? I don't know, if I'm being honest. I understand that, yes. Is there anything else I might need to be aware of? There was a meeting of the stockholders that has been called. Is it about this situation? I won't know until everything is completed, but signs point towards yes. I think your associate, Mr. Rodney, organized it to cover his own back. It's to be expected, I suppose. Inform me of any news when it comes to that sort of situation, yes. I'm sure it will come find us soon enough, and that meeting will not be good. With the amount of automatic doors down, it made getting through the ship a little more challenging. There was a lot of winding and unwinding of handles to get the doors to open, and then they had to be shut behind her. Safety reasons and all that. The bridge was quiet when Kaylee got to it, with a foggy exterior right out there, just beyond the windows, but not giving much vision. "Captain?" Kaylee called out. "Yes, what is it, Kaylee?" "Where are you?" She took a few steps in as she said this to find Ursula, lying on the floor near some screens. There were wires in her hands as she plugged and unplugged some things. "I would say right here, but you already found me. Did you shut down the computer?" "No, we think it shut down before we could do anything, but we do believe we found what is the computer room." "I sense that you have a problem, so what is it?" "We aren't sure if we should do anything, Captain. The computer might be linked to some important part of the ship, and to smash them—" Sitting up to that news, Ursula sighed but nodded. "Can you see anything on those screens in front of you?" "No, Captain, they're all blank." "Well, unless the computer decides to reboot and come back to life, to save itself, we're in a situation." Ursula's comments trailed off to see if the computer was playing some sort of game with them, and it didn't respond, no. "Destroy one of those servers, or two of them, or whatever they are that is in that room, and see if things change. It won't matter much, and we're probably doomed anyway," Ursula ordered. "Okay, you're sure about that, Captain?" "Kaylee, there was a ship out there that I saw, but it didn't see us somehow. I don't think we're going to get out of this because we're in this all on our own. So try anything and everything then." "Yes, Kaylee. Get to it and fast." Kaylee found herself slowly backing away towards the door. She kept an eye on her captain, who went back to work trying to get the computer screens to come back to life. Despite the weird transmission that had come over the speaker system outside the engine room, Chris had gone into the room. The hum of engines had him curious, since they should be shut off. Relying on a flashlight in the emergency ones made things difficult to see. His flashlight swept over the engine in front of him that was busily running. "Okay, so there's a little water in this room and the power is out, no matter which breaker I've switched to here. Some of which should have turned off everything in this room." The communications intercom suddenly crackled to life once again. "Chris, are you down in the engines?" Yes, can you hear me, Captain?" "Barely. Things are all messed up, and I've managed to rig up a bypass that allows this to work, though. Who knows for how long, or if the computer will shut this down as well. How are things down there?" "Actually running? I'm not sure why, but the engines should be off when they go to an emergency."
Chris replied, though he wasn't sure of what he was saying.
What do you mean they didn't shut off at all? No, they're running, and I can't access data since the computers are down. But yeah, there's no shutdown from what I can tell. So then the computer running this whole ship is still in control. I couldn't tell you, Captain. One way or another, there's one other thing of note that I should say. Yes, what is it? Our fuel supply. What gauges we do have, a regular gauge for it, says that our fuel is running low. But it shouldn't be. We've barely gotten anywhere according to what the mapping system showed us.
I guess it took a lot of fuel to get here, maybe. I guess, Chris said.
Check the data and then the extra tanks. See what they say. Now, I already thought of that since I can't access the info on the computer. From what I could tell, it appears that we left port without all of the fuel we needed, since those are pretty empty as well. How? Didn't you check? I know I went through and looked, but did you? I did, Captain, and I had the same result, that it all looked okay to me when we were leaving. Shit. Check everything and anything, or we may soon be on sail power. Can you do anything to the engines, shut them off and save fuel or whatever? Unlikely. They're controlled by the computer and powered down to that. I mean, I tried already. It doesn't seem like it wants to let us do anything in the first place, so we're kind of screwed. Right, so we might not want to destroy any computers in the first place. Shit. I'll see what I can do about these engines. I'm sure there's an emergency shut-off somewhere around here. Maybe it'll work. Good. Get on that, Chris. The communication line then fell dead. Chris turned back to his work. The wall of valves that could be turned and unturned had a few screens that said this and that. They usually write data were mostly dark. What do I even do here? Everything is broken and or locked away where I cannot access it. He sloshed his way towards those valves and screens, looking about for any other emergency buttons. A manual might help. It was somewhere around here, but when he'd searched for it, he couldn't find it. Take a moment, collect yourself and think, Chris. There isn't time to blank out and stare awkwardly at the same spot you stared at before. There's a solution around here, hopefully. Skye had walked the computer room several times while waiting for Kaylee to return. He knew a thing or two about computers and making them work. Generally, there was a button to turn them off or on, and how to get around within the system itself. But faced with wires and plugs, that was a whole mess of things that looked complicated to deal with. A clanging noise drew his attention to the doorway as Kaylee came bursting in, his mind jumping to the conclusion about what it could possibly be. Hey, he said. We have permission to destroy some stuff and see what happens. Really? I figured the captain wouldn't want to just rush into things. She said it was okay to pick out something and wreck it. I don't know what else to tell you. He glanced around the space and bit his lip. There was so much, and so many things around them. Even just one could ruin the whole thing, and he had a bit of time to think about what would happen from a single wire being pulled. Right, I guess, do you want to choose which to destroy? No? It's your job. Do you actually want to do this? Kaylee asked. Not really. It feels like everything will go wrong if I do something to these machines. Well, it's our job to do something, though. Captain's orders. Maybe we should just wait a bit, in case someone changes their mind. Kaylee fixed him with a look of, I don't believe this, and marched over towards the machine that he stood closest to. His mind had wandered to all sorts of questions of right and wrong and how to do this, and kept coming up with this wasn't such a great idea in his mind. We have work to do. Pull the plug on this, Kaylee told him. As he reached for it, the intercom crackled to life, making them both jump and look about. And thankfully he didn't pull out the cable, which he'd just grabbed a hold of. Did I get through to a computer room? What? Yes, you did, Captain. That is you, right, Captain, not the computer trying to trick us? Yes, it is me.
Can you prove it then? No, I can't right now, Kaylee, and I don't have time to do so. Listen, there's been a change in plans. Do not unplug any computers at this moment. Okay, why, Captain? As you figured it out, it might destroy the entire ship. We need to know which things to attack before we attack them, okay? Not really. It sounds like something a computer would ask of us. Don't you agree, Kaylee? Yeah, I kind of agree. You too. Is there a power button somewhere around there? Yes and no, Captain. That's a confusing answer, Kaylee. The emergency power is on, but not the main power, like in the rest of the ship, Kaylee then explained. I have a question. Can a computer even run on emergency power? To some extent, Second in Command. The engines are reportedly going, but running out of fuel. We will soon be dead in the water if we don't figure things out. Then why shouldn't we unplug things if we're out here to sink? A sudden and terrible thought struck Skye that this boat had been sent out to sink. Even though he just said that, it didn't make much sense, since they had important cargo aboard, so they'd been told. But also businesses did things, strange things that only made sense to them, so he couldn't rule things out either. A great, terrible conundrum to be stuck in. I doubt the CEO of this company, the company who hired and created this boat, wants his brand new boat to sink, but you never know, Ursula pointed out. It does seem a bit silly, Skye. Does it, Captain? Kaylee? A ship with lots of weird things going on, and the one that you draw the line at, is it sinking in a place where no one can get to? Well, we were spotted briefly by the other ship. I think they're Coast Guard. So one ship who promptly lost us in what I suppose is still a lot of fog? Yes, and bad weather, and the fog, for whatever reason, is sitting around as we cruise about trying to get out of the ocean. So we have no fuel, a rescue ship that potentially can't find us, and cargo we're not supposed to know about. None of that is more weird than a computer is controlling things. It's everything just weird here. It is weird, but what can we do about it? It was a good question from Kaylee, and which one he had no answer to. The latest meeting about various business affairs had just wrapped up. It wasn't satisfactory news for Hendrik, and there had been plenty of questions about the boat. Nothing that got to the heart of the matter, though, thankfully. One of his associates, David, sat a few seats away, unmoving as the rest of the group had departed, and once they were all gone, David turned to him. Anything to report? Everything is going about as we figured it would. I need answers to hold off these people on your back, Mr. Hendrik. And here I was thinking you wanted them because it would put more pressure on me to do things. His associate gave him a toothy grin that said, maybe, as he sat back in his chair enjoying the moment of what was going on. Listen, I have to have everything in order just in case. I need news, I need updates, I need to know what is going on. No doubt, but you could have told me first. It's better to work together than plotting against one another. Mr. Hendricks, I am not plotting against you. You just did, though, David. Well, only a little bit, Hendrik. Just tell me what your whole plot is, and I will hopefully help you out. All I'm trying to do, Mr. CEO, is secure the company against any potential backlash when the news gets out. If it gets out, David. It probably will. Because of you? David slowly rises from his chair, smiling at the suggestion, but saying nothing for a moment. There was a folder in his hand, which he was playing with as he thought of something. It didn't make Hendrik comfortable or happy to see. And all I get is silence from you. No, I am coming up with an answer to appease you, since you insist on it. But it isn't easy, Mr. Hendricks. Say something and be done with it. Let's move on, shall we? I'll defend my job and work with whatever it takes to stop whatever you're trying to do. No, I'm not trying to take over the company, if that's what you are implying. Really now, David? Yes, I have no head for such things. It requires a certain bit of cunning and pretty face to get people to like you. I prefer sitting in the background and letting people do things for me. And yet you sat here being a pretty face for this meeting, so I doubt that is completely honest. Doubt all you want, Mr. CEO. I've got to get going. There's business to do and to keep running. And you have your ship to carefully watch for any signs of life. David had moved over towards the door and was reaching for the handle to get out. One thing, you have connections to Blue Block. How deep do they go? What is that?
David responded.
You didn't think I would look into your contracts and see who was ordering what for our company? No, I knew you would do that, Mr. Hendricks, but something is weird if you think that I had some hand in all of this. You're claiming you don't? No, Mr. Hendricks, I would rather see things succeed. Blue Block might be up to something else. I'm just not aware of it. You have a chance to play both sides if you're interested. No, I'm not sure that I am. Think about it, Mr. David. Our survival, this company's survival, will need someone who is willing to work with both sides. And what would I even gain if I did that, CEO? More power to use behind the scenes? Isn't that what you've always wanted? There was a long pause as David slowly nodded yes. It might be. Hendrik organized his own papers in front of him and got them nestled away into their proper place. He then rose from his own seat as David remained at the door, waiting for something more. You have work to do and things to think about, David. No reason for you to stick around here to listen to me babble on, when you already have some plans you have in action. With a shake of his head, David opens the door and leaves. The setting sun cast a bright light through the window of the bridge. It was helpful for seeing things about the place, since the emergency lights had decided they no longer wanted to work. Ursula moved about the space, staring at her makeshift system, allowing the intercom system to work. For now, anyway. There was a knock on the door that brought her attention over there as Chris, armed with a flashlight, enters. Fuel? We're almost out, Captain. Well, that's great. We have no control, endless fog, and the rescue ship is off somewhere else. Any orders? Did you shut off the engines? Any controls that I found allowing us to do so did absolutely nothing. We are on a doomed boat, then. Should we send out a distress signal and prepare to abandon the ship, Captain? Or do you think there's still some controls left thanks to the sails? She walked over to the wheel, pushing it to go around in a circle. It spun about easily, with no effort, and then just kept going. We have no real way of communicating. I've looked for the backup radios and so on, but they aren't on the bridge, so I don't know. Where would those backup radios be, Cap? If I had to guess, the computer room where Sky and Kaylee are. It would make the most sense if the computer really is controlling the boat to control everything. At the same time, they could be anywhere or nowhere. Have you been in touch with those two, Captain? Yes, Chris. I stopped them from wrecking things, though Sky seemed to be torn about doing it in the first place. That's weird. He seemed to be raring to get in there and then just stopped. She shrugged in response. There was little to do or say about this, since she couldn't abandon the bridge when they have no control over the ship. Maybe he just got a weird feeling about all of it. Before she could say much further, a loud, heavy foghorn sounded. Its noise ripped through the air and through the boat. Ursula jumped in surprise and looked to the nearest window, where the sound felt like it was coming from. What in the hell? Is that the rescue boat? I don't know. The fog is still too heavy to tell.
Both moved to get close to the windows to try and peer out. It was a useless effort, with the thick fog sitting right there, not letting them see very far. It was also strange that it felt like there was a lot of sunlight trying to break through all of this. Ursula double-checked her watch, which read 6 p.m. For this time of season, it felt like it should not be so bright, if they were headed in the right direction. Well, what are we going to do then, Captain? I don't see a ship, land, or even a lighthouse that could have made that noise, so just brace yourself for anything. With that warning out of the way, Ursula then rushed over to her jury-rigged communication system that allowed her to communicate around the ship. Crew, prepare for impact. We've got blasted by a foghorn, but we don't know from where. What was that, Captain? Kaylee asked. A foghorn sounded. Didn't you hear it down there? There was a very long pause as she waited for a response from the computer room. Kaylee had wandered a bit away from where Skye stood, looking over some nearby parts that had blinking lights. It appeared to be a computer, so that's what she was calling it at the moment, and the last question from Ursula had left them a bit dumbfounded, but when they went to respond, that system had cut out. Should we just abandon this place and go back to the bridge? I'm all for it, though I worry that if we do, the computer is going to take over and shut this place down so we never get to it again. So that we can't find it or something? He grimaces as he moves about the room as well, and there's many things around here that had cables and whatnot. And they had to be careful so that they didn't step one wrong direction or knock something out of whack. I don't know, Kaylee. It was a thought or fear that went through me that the computer is still in charge here. Probably still is, but there's nothing we can do here right now. The bridge might have more information. They did say something about a foghorn, Kaylee said. About the horn, I know. I feel like I doubt it. Not that it was anything. Maybe it was their seasickness and the imagination, because we are out towards the middle of the ocean. If we are where we're supposed to be, the computer... Yeah, it does what it wants. Alright, let's just go, if we have nothing better to do. They both picked their way back towards the door, avoiding everything, only to find it shut behind them. Did Chris shut the door on his way out? I don't think so, but honestly I wasn't paying that much attention. Didn't you come through more recently? Why? Everything's just getting to me. I'm starting to suspect and feel like everything is off. Yeah, everything is. This trip has been cursed from the start, and none of it makes any sense. I feel like we need to turn off our brains if we want to survive this. I don't think I could or should do that. Agreed, Kaylee. But it's what this damn ship seems to want us to do. The computer controls everything, and we move about like brainless idiots doing its bidding. Why are we doing that? I don't know. Right, let's just go, Skye. Ursula stared at what was before her, not wanting to speak or ruin anything. It was beautiful out there, and crystal clear as far as the eye could see, yet it shouldn't be there. Before them was an island in a dying light of the evening hours, as it was surrounded by all sorts of boats, from old sailing ships to more modern cargo vessels, all of them surrounding this lush-looking island that wasn't giant or anything like that, but big enough where they couldn't really see all sides of this beautiful location of an island. Are you seeing what I'm seeing, Chris? Yep, but what exactly are we seeing? Ships, island, no fog, all of that stuff. And our ship led us somewhere in the middle of the ocean where no islands or ship should be. Words were caught in her throat for the moment, and she really didn't want to say it, but it also felt like the only thing that made sense. A Bermuda Triangle of sorts. That's silly, Captain. A knock on the door made them look up to see Kaylee and Skye entering and then come to a stop. They too both stared out the window. What is that? A place that isn't on the map, Kaylee. I heard Bermuda Triangle.
coming from you, Captain. Please tell me you aren't serious. I don't know how else to potentially explain it, Sky. The ship continued to move along, heading straight for that island. End of Part 8 of Against an Angry Ocean. Thank you for listening.